Welcome to the deep dive. Here, we take source materials, could be dense, maybe fascinating, sometimes overlooked, and we really pull out the key insights just for you, the learner.
And today, we're diving into something quite old. It's excerpts from an ancient text called Tissatthera Vatthu 3.
Right, so this story, it takes us way back, doesn't it, to the time of the Buddha.
Exactly. We're in the Devala monastery, and the main figure we're looking at is a monk named Tissa. Now, he's actually the Buddha's cousin, which is pretty significant in this context.
Okay, so there's a connection there. And our mission for this deep dive, we want to unpack a really timeless lesson here about conflict, right? And what happens when we kind of hold on to grievances.
Yeah, the story with Tissa and some other monks, it's fascinating how relevant it still feels. It really gets into how we handle being wronged or thinking we've been wronged.
Okay, let's get into it then. Tell us about this central figure in Tissatthera.
Right. So Tissa, he's presented as an elderly monk, someone who ordained, later in his life. And the text even gives us a physical description, Philisara,
Philisarita.
meaning physically large, sort of stout or imposing. So you get this picture of a big guy in the monastery. And being the Buddha's cousin, well, that gave him a certain standing, certain benefits and honor.
Okay, and he looked the part too, it sounds like.
He did. We're told he often sat in the assembly hall wearing these really well-kept robes. The Pāli term is akutapakutehi tivarahi.
Ah, okay, so meticulous robes,
Yeah.
like showing his status.
Kind of, yeah.
Well,
It suggests he cared about appearances, maybe leaned into that perceived seniority.
so picture this. Visiting monks arrive. They see this large, well-dressed elder monk,
Exactly. They naturally assume he's a senior figure, someone important, so they approach him respectfully.
and they do the usual monastic thing, asking about duties, the vata.
Yeah, the customary practices. And they even offer services like foot massage, Padasambhana Dini, just normal monastic courtesies.
Standard procedure. But here's the twist, right? Tissa's reaction.
Silence. Just complete silence. He doesn't engage at all. So, tuchi hoti, the text says. He is silent.
Okay, so right away there's friction. That silence, it's not neutral, is it? It feels like it could be easily misinterpreted.
Oh, absolutely. And it seems like that's maybe part of the setup here, how quickly these small things, these assumptions and reactions can snowball.
So this silence doesn't go unnoticed.
Not at all. One of the younger visiting monks, he sees this and he gets, pretty frustrated. He doesn't see contemplation. He sees disrespect.
Disrespect for the visitors, for the elders maybe, and for the rules.
Exactly. He thinks Tissa is ignoring proper etiquette. So this younger monk, he actually speaks up.
He confronts him.
Yeah, directly. He questions Tissa's actual seniority, because remember, Tissa ordained late, so maybe he wasn't technically a senior in monk years as his age suggested, and he openly calls him out for being rude.
And it gets quite pointed, doesn't it?
Yeah.
The text mentions him snapping his fingers.
It does. A charapahari, a sharp snap of the fingers, like a tut-tut gesture of disapproval. And then he calls Tissa Dubanita.
Dubanita. Badly trained, ill-mannered.
That's the one. Pretty strong words in a monastic setting. You can feel the tension just ratchet up.
Yeah, I bet. And Tissa, how does he take this public rebuke?
Not well. Not well at all. The text specifically says he felt insulted because of his noble background, his lineage, Katyamanada Janetva.
Ah, okay. So his pride, maybe tied to being related to the Buddha, his family status, it gets pricked.
Definitely. It shows how our identity can get tangled up in these external things, right? Like social standing.
So he feels insulted. What does he do? Does he argue back?
Oh, it's more than arguing. He gets furious. He demands to know who these monks think they are, who they serve, and then he makes this really intense threat.
The lineage threat.
Yes, he says he'll cut off their lineage, mulameva vuchindisami.
Wow, that sounds heavy. What exactly would that imply in that world?
It's a serious threat. Lineage there refers to your connection, your line of teachers and disciples. So threatening to cut that off is like threatening their whole identity and standing within the monastic order. It's deeply aggressive, especially for monks.
Okay, so things have escalated really fast. From silence to finger snapping to threats about lineage, and Tissa's still upset.
Oh, yeah. He's completely overwhelmed. He feels humiliated, angry. So he goes straight to the Buddha, but he's weeping, really distressed.
So he takes his complaint to the top, basically, but in a very emotional state. What happens when the Buddha gets involved?
Well, the Buddha, he sees Tissa coming, clearly upset, and he asks him very gently, but directly, why he's in such a state. Kinutva Tissa duki dumano asumuko ruramano agatosi.
Like, Tissa, why are you here crying, looking so miserable?
Exactly, a calm inquiry into the situation.
In the other monks, the ones involved in the confrontation.
They actually follow Tissa to the Buddha. The text says they were worried he might cause some kind of trouble, kineshia karya, maybe stir things up.
So they're concerned, too, maybe feeling a bit responsible.
Could be. Or just worried about the fallout. So everyone's now gathered before the Buddha.
And Tissa makes his case.
He does. He points the finger straight at the visiting monks. Imema bante bhikkhu akasanti. Venerable sir, these monks are insulting me.
A clear accusation. But the Buddha doesn't just react to that, does he?
No, that's the key. He doesn't take sides immediately. Instead, he starts asking Tissa questions. Very specific questions.
Like what?
Like, okay, Tissa, where are you sitting? Did you actually see these monks arrive? Did you stand up? Did you offer to take their bags, their bowls, parakargahena?
Right. The basic courtesies.
Exactly. Did you offer them water paniya? Did you offer them a seat, a foot massage? All the things an elder monk would typically do.
And Tissa's answers.
Pretty telling. To each question, he basically admits no. Nakata abante, I didn't do it, sir. Napuchita bante, I didn't ask, sir.
Ah. So the Buddha, just through questioning, reveals that Tissa actually failed in his duties first. The initial silence wasn't just silence, it was a lapse in etiquette.
Precisely. So the picture becomes much clearer. Tissa wasn't just quietly minding his own business, he was neglecting expected monastic conduct.
Okay, so now the Buddha has the facts. What does he say?
He delivers his judgment, gently but firmly. He explains that, yes, showing these courtesies is the duty, vatakataba, of an elder monk, and therefore, Tissa tameva doso, the fault is actually yours.
The fault lies with you, Tissa. Ouch.
Yeah. And then he tells Tissa what he needs to do. Etibiku kamapai. Go ask these monks for forgiveness.
It makes sense. Apologize and clear the air. Does Tissa do it?
You'd think so, right? But no, Tissa, still smarting from the younger monk's insult, maybe clinging to that wounded pride, he refuses.
Refuses the Buddha.
Flat out. He says, "Etema bante akosu nahabete kamapemi," but they insulted me, venerable sir. I am not forgiving them.
Wow. Okay, so we have a standoff. Pride versus, well, the Buddha's direct instruction.
It really highlights how powerful that feeling of being wronged can be, doesn't it? It can just override everything else, even wisdom from the highest source.
So the Buddha tells him again.
He does, repeats the instruction, but Tissa digs his heels in. Nakamapemi bante. Nope, not forgiving them.
He's really stuck. So what does the Buddha do now? This is where he shifts gears, right?
Exactly. The other monks are watching this, and they even mutter something like, "Duboko esobante." Man, this guy is difficult to instruct, sir.
Understatement, maybe.
And the Buddha actually agrees. He says, yeah, pubipes duboko yeva. He was difficult to instruct in the past, too. This isn't new.
Setting the stage.
Setting the stage to really drive the point home for Tissa and for everyone listening. The Buddha decides to tell a story from a past life, Atitahari.
Okay, a Jataka-style story to show this pattern.
Precisely, to illustrate the roots of this stubbornness. So the story takes place in Varanasi, way back when a king ruled there.
And the characters?
2 ascetics, holy men, one named Devala, the other Narada. They had this routine, 8 months meditating in the Himalayas, then 4 months living near the city for supplies, interaction, whatever.
Got it. Solitude and then back near civilization.
Right. So one night, as they're near the city, both of them independently seek shelter in a potter's workshop, a kumbhakara sala. Just a place to stay out of the elements.
Okay. And Devala gets there first.
Devala arrives first, and he decides to lie down right across the entrance, blocking the doorway.
Not the most considerate spot.
Not really. So Narada arrives later, finds Devala asleep there. Bit awkward.
I can see where this is going. Accidental stepping incident incoming.
You got it. During the night, Narada needs to leave the hall for, whatever reason. It's dark. He accidentally steps on Devala's hair, his matted ascetic hair, Chasuakami.
Ouch.
Yeah,
nobody likes their hair stepped on.
Yeah.
Especially maybe an ascetic's matted locks.
Right. So Devala wakes up instantly, furious, and he lashes out, calling Narada Kujaila.
Which means?
Something like crooked ascetic or deceitful matted hair guy. An insult.
Okay. How does Narada react?
Narada apologizes immediately, says, look, I'm really sorry I didn't see you there. It was dark. Total accident.
Seems reasonable. Does Devala accept the apology?
Well, the story doesn't explicitly say, but things escalate later. Narada comes back into the potter's hall later that night.
Oh, no.
Yeah. He's trying to be super careful this time, tiptoeing around, and in the darkness, he accidentally steps on Devala's neck. Kavaya Akami.
On his neck. Oh, that's much worse.
Way worse. Now, Devala is absolutely enraged, understandably, maybe, but his reaction is extreme. He threatens Narada with a curse. Apisa pisamita, I'm gonna curse you.
It seems Devala, like Tissa, has a bit of a temper and isn't quick to forgive accidental harm.
Exactly, the parallel the Buddha is drawing. And Devala makes good on the threat. He curses Narada, saying, "May your head split into 7 pieces when the sun rises."
Oh, that's intense. A deadly curse over accidentally being stepped on twice.
Intense anger, right. But here's where it gets really interesting. Narada isn't just any ascetic. He's spiritually powerful. He can remember past lives, future lives, Siddhikape Nusarati, 80 eons worth.
Okay, so he has some serious insight.
Serious insight. He knows he was innocent, that the stepping was accidental, and he knows Devala's curse, fueled by anger, could actually harm Devala himself if it rebounds onto the guilty party.
So out of compassion for Devala, even though Devala just cursed him.
Exactly. Out of compassion on Anukampetaka, Narada uses his psychic abilities, his idibalena, to do something extraordinary. He stops the sun from rising. Arugamanani varesi.
Stops the sunrise. Just like that. Because of this argument in a potter's shed.
Just like that. Talk about the ripple effects of holding a grudge, huh?
No kidding. So the sun doesn't rise. What happens in Varanasi?
Panic, basically. People are distressed. It's unnatural. They go to the king, pleading for him to figure out what's wrong and fix it.
So the king investigates.
He does, and eventually his search leads him to the potter's hall and these 2 ascetics.
Okay, so the king confronts them.
He questions Narada. Why is the sun not rising? Narada explains the whole thing, the accidental stepping, the curse, and crucially, Devala's absolute refusal to forgive him.
So the king turns to Devala.
Yes. The king pleads with Devala. Look, forgive him. Let the sun rise. Your own curse might rebound on you. He urges him to let it go.
And Devala. Does the pressure work?
Nope. Just like Tissa. Even facing the threat of his own head splitting into 7 pieces, Devala refuses. Nakamapemi, I do not forgive. Stubborn to the core.
Wow. Pride and anger literally overriding his survival instinct. So what does the king do? He can't just let the darkness continue.
He takes decisive action. He orders his men to grab Devala, physically seize him, and force him to prostrate at Narada's feet.
Force him to bow down, humbling him.
Completely humbling him. And now Devala is literally at Narada's mercy. Narada then tells him to rise. He says, "Okay, I forgive you."
Finally. So the curse is broken.
Not quite so simple. Narada forgives, but then he gives the king another instruction. He tells the king to take Devala to a nearby pond and place him in the water, neck deep.
Neck deep in a pond.
Yes, and put a clod of wet clay on top of his head.
Clay on his head. Why? What's that about?
It seems symbolic, a way for the curse's energy to discharge safely, perhaps. So Devala is stuck there, neck deep, clay on his head. Then Narada releases his hold on the sun.
And the sun rises.
The first rays hit the clay clod on Devala's head, and it splits into 7 pieces.
The clay splits, not Devala's head.
Exactly. The curse is fulfilled, but harmlessly, on the clay. Then Narada tells Devala, okay, now dunk under the water and get out of here by a different route once I fully let the sun rise.
And Devala does. He flees.
He complies, probably terrified, and maybe, just maybe, having learned something. He submerges and escapes. A pretty dramatic resolution.
Absolutely. It powerfully shows the destructive potential of that anger and how forgiveness, even conditional, brought about a release. So the Buddha finishes this story.
And then he connects the dots. He reveals the identities, the helpful king in the story. That was Ananda, one of his chief disciples in a past life. Devala, the incredibly stubborn ascetic.
That was Tissa?
That was Tissa. And Narada, the powerful, compassionate ascetic who stopped the sun.
That was the Buddha himself.
Exactly. So he's showing Tissa, look, this isn't new behavior for you. This pattern of stubbornness goes way back.
A really skillful way to provide perspective without direct confrontation again. So what's the final teaching here, the takeaway from all this?
The Buddha turns directly to Tissa, bringing it right back to the present moment, and he delivers the core lesson. He says that holding on to thoughts like, he abused me, he struck me, he defeated me, he robbed me, the Pāli is akochiman, avadiman, ajinima, hasimet.
Constantly replaying the hurt.
Yes. If you keep doing that, viratasana, samadhi, the hatred, the enmity, it never settles down. It never gets appeased.
It just keeps festering.
Exactly. And he reinforces this with those 2 famous verses from the Dhammapada. First, akochima, avadima, ajinima asime, ikata upanahanti, vatatasana samadhi.
Which basically says, If you harbor those thoughts, he hurt me, he beat me, he robbed me, your hatred never ends.
Right. But then the second verse offers the alternative. Akochimai, avadimai, ajinimai, ahasime, yekata nupanehanti, verate supasamati.
And the key difference there is the nupanaihanti, those who do not harbor such thoughts.
Their hatred is appeased, it settles down, it's a direct contrast. Hold on. Hatred stays, let go, hatred fades.
And the Buddha explains how this works, how dwelling keeps it alive.
Yeah, he uses these really vivid images. He says dwelling on it is like constantly adding fuel to a fire, or like someone carrying a heavy burden, or constantly wrapping up rotting fish with sharp grass. Sakadira vianadina putimachadini viaka kusarihipona pura vianta upanayanti.
Oh, wrapping rotten fish in grass.
Yeah.
That's a powerful image of making things worse, holding on to negativity.
Isn't it? It just keeps the stink going, basically. But conversely, if you don't dwell on it, maybe through just lack of attention, letting it go, as a manasikarvasena, or maybe by reflecting on your own actions, your own karma,
Understanding cause and effect.
right, then the anger just naturally subsides, like a fire with no fuel. Nirantano via jataveda upasamati, it just goes out on its own.
Such a clear and practical teaching on managing anger and resentment. And what's the effect of all this? On the monks, on Tissa.
The impact was apparently huge. The text says 100,000 monks listening attained various stages of spiritual awakening right then and there. So, apatifaladini papuchasu.
Wow. 100,000.
That's a traditional number given, signifying a massive positive impact. And perhaps most tellingly, even Tissa, the difficult one.
He finally got it.
He became amenable to instruction. Ubako pi suvakayo jato. The difficult one became easy to speak to. The teaching, especially through that past life story, finally broke through his resistance.
That's quite a transformation. So, wrapping this up, our deep dive into this ancient story, the Tissatthera Vatthu, it really lays bare a fundamental truth about conflict, doesn't it?
It really does. The absolute importance of letting go of grievances. It's presented not just as a nice idea, but as the essential path to finding any kind of inner peace or resolving disputes.
And like you said earlier, this isn't just some dusty old tale. There's real, practical wisdom here for you, the learner, right now.
Absolutely. Think about it. How often do you find yourself mentally replaying some argument, some perceived slight, some injustice, just turning it over and over?
Holding on to our own versions of being stepped on, maybe.
Exactly. Those personal matted hair or stepped on neck moments. Could holding on to those, dwelling on them, actually be blocking your own peace, your own well-being, without you even fully realizing it?
Which brings us to a final thought for you to chew on. Reflect on maybe what lingering resentments, what perceived wrongs you might still be carrying around.
Yeah, and consider this. What might happen if you consciously chose not to keep adding fuel to that fire, if you chose not to dwell on it? Could that letting go lead to a different kind of sunrise in your own life?
A release, maybe, from the darkness of resentment into something lighter, more peaceful.
It's definitely worth contemplating. And if this has piqued your interest, the Tissatthera Vatthu itself, while just one story, is a great little window into the richness of Buddhist teachings on these very human struggles.
Thank you for joining us on the Deep Dive.